The world's best high-performance sailors are competing at the 49er, 49er FX, and Nacra 17 World Championships here in Nova Scotia, Canada. 280 sailors are battling it out over 6 days to reach the 10-boat medal race final, where the top 3 will fill the podium. The men's 49er and women's 49er FX are 2 of the most athletically and aerobically challenging skiffs in the sailing world. And the Nacra 17, sailed with a mixed female and male team, is a high-performance catamaran capable of hydrofoiling at speeds over 55 kilometers per hour. The championship for these 3 Olympic classes is hosted by a group of super enthusiastic volunteers at Hubbard's Community Sailing Association in a beautiful seaside town of less than 1,000 people. This is the most important regatta of the season for these athletes as they work towards Olympic glory at the Paris 2024 Games less than 2 years from now. Keep watching and enjoy all the action from Nova Scotia, Canada.
We're starting off the final day of our coverage of the World Championships by looking at the final fleet race for the 49er FX, and it's going to be a pretty fascinating one that we watch play out. My name's Andy Rice, this is Chris Muesler, and this is Lisa Ross. Lisa, it's a scenario where we've got the reigning world champions from the Netherlands looking over their shoulder at the Swedes. How do you think it's going to play out? Because neither of these teams like light winds. That's what's forecast for the final day.
Yeah, so I mean the forecast doesn't bode well for these 2 teams as far as consistency is concerned. So I think they're both really going to be looking back at what went wrong when we saw light conditions and offshore conditions earlier in the week, and really trying to fix some of those mistakes and work probably on their communication and their decision making in this condition. We are expecting it to be quite a bit lighter, and again, as I said, offshore. So. You know, there's going to be a lot of movement within the races, and they're going to be trying to capitalize on other people's mistakes and on the passing lanes.
Chris, we're recording this on the penultimate day. At the end of the penultimate day, the sun is shining. We've had pretty much sunshine all the way. Are you going to be able to keep on smiling all the way through the final day, even if the sun goes in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this week has been fantastic. Everyone's pretty tired. I mean, these athletes have trained for this all year. It's the most important regatta of this cycle. And so they're not tired. We shouldn't be tired either. And, you know, it's awesome to see in the 49er and the FX that the reigning world champions are on top of the leaderboard, but it's not unassailable. It's close in some ways, but there's one more fleet race left, and then the medal race. So there's an awful lot that can happen. I think, you know, just watching these athletes push it so hard at the end of a week, this is where the best sailors in the world start to show up, because that's when everyone's tired and they just have that little extra bit in the tank.
That's why they need the fitness that they have. So that's happening in the morning. It's a final fleet race for all 3 fleets, the 49er FX, the 49er and the Nacra 17. Then we wait a few hours, and then later on in the afternoon, it's going to be the 10-boat medal races. And that's finally when we will see the world titles decided for 2022. It's going to be a great day. Well, that was the sunny day yesterday evening, a little bit more overcast, and this is the first day that I haven't actually seen the sun shining over St. Margaret's Bay. Lisa, are we going to see sunshine later on?
I don't know. I think some of the sailors might be packing up in a little bit wetter conditions than we've had for the rest of the week. Yeah, here's the shot of the FX is just warming up there on course A, and as you can see, there's a pretty consistent medium cloud cover over the whole race course and basically the whole province today. So there's a little tiny bit of spitting water coming down, which tells you that there's some downdraft. So you can see that there's a little bit of difference in the cloud cover over the race course. You can see that some of the clouds look a little darker than others. If those clouds are low enough and they're downdraft clouds, then they will affect the race course. So along with the general shifting back and forth, because this is a breeze coming off the land today, there may be some effect from this cloud cover. So the sailors are really going to have to be on their toes, and it's likely going to be a pressure game out there today.
So let's remind ourselves of what these FX sailors are facing today. They have come out for the final of their, this is going to be race 16, the final of their series before the top 10 qualify to go through into the medal race later on this afternoon. So as things stand, if you look at the bottom in 10th, it's Joe Alley and Molly Meach, a new pairing. They are sitting in 10th place. Grail and Kunz, the reigning Olympic champions, are surprised to see them down in 9th. Maloney and Hobbs from New Zealand in 8th. And the points are all very, very close here. So just a matter of a few points here and there between 5th place and 8th place, or even 9th place, actually. So Grail and Kunz could easily climb up to 5th, and they could potentially get higher than that. So there's a lot left to play here. So above the Spanish, Suarez and Cantero, we've got Robel and Shea from the USA. Good day yesterday. Black and Tidy, they had a bit of a fall from grace for them. Melzaka and Jankowiak from Poland keep on getting better and better throughout this regatta, knocking on the door of the podium, but is actually a little bit of a gap to Echegoyen and Barthelo, the double world champions from Spain, who hold 3rd place and look fairly secure in bronze. Above them, it's also a big gap to Bobek and Netzler from Sweden, who are looking to close the gap in this coming race to see if they can topple Van Aanholt and Doets. Van Aanholt being the winner of last year's World Championship and now teamed up with Doets, who in the past has won 2 World Championships, sailing with Annemiek Beckering. So that's the scenario. Let's just dive down to Ali and Meach are on 163 points. Let's have a look at the next 10. So 163 to 175 for Mainhert and Goetz from Belgium, and 178 for Germany and Bertuzzi. So that's a 12-point deficit that the Belgians have to make up on the Kiwis if they're going to jump up into this medal race. So it's not impossible. But Lisa, do you think we're going to see much change?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say about this fleet is that all 35 of the boats in the fleet are out here. Unlike the 49ers, where you've only got the 25 in the gold fleet, it's a bigger fleet, so there is more possibility for movement within that fleet. And also, if you look at the scores, there are some pretty big drops within that top group. So when we're talking about drops, the Spanish, they've got one of the most consistent scorecards, but again, they're dropping at 24. The leaders are dropping at 29. So pretty much everybody, if they have a bad race today, they're going to have to keep it. So there could be some movement. I think Joe and Ali and Meach, they've got to keep on their toes today for sure if they want to stay inside that top 10. But really, I think there's only 2 or 3 boats that could even potentially get in there. Realistically, 2. So we're looking down to 12th to the Italians. The Canadians, the Lewin Lafrance sisters, they have a redress. So as they sail, if they sail well, their redress gets better because it's an average points of their score. So that will affect their score a little bit more than just this race if they have a good one, but they've got a ways to go in order to get into that top 10. Currently they've got 35 points, so that's pretty much a race win and a reversal of almost the whole fleet in order for them to get in.
We've had a mix of conditions all week, but day 3, I think it was, the Friday, was the weirdest and strangest day, and it really caught the top 2 in the FX on the back foot. They really struggled that day, and it's the only time that we've seen the Dutch or the Swedes really vulnerable and capable of being beaten by anybody else in the fleet. Do you think there is cause for concern for either of those teams today?
No, I mean, most of these teams are seasoned professionals at what they do, and especially if you've had a bad day in a condition, they kind of have a little bit. It's a little bit of a different day to day, but they've got to redo in that communication. Staying with the phase, maybe sailing. Not looking for the greatest lane, which is where they want to be. When they're in that speed mode for the other days, and so I think you'll see them be a little bit more on their toes and a little bit more consistent today, likely because of the learning that they would have had coming out of that day on day 3 of this event.
Yeah, that was certainly a learning day for both of them. But they're very solid performers across the board normally. So maybe it was just an aberration for both of those teams. So Sweden has only got one race in which to close the gap. And so it's going to be critical for them. It's going to rely on a bit of an error by the Dutch as well. So Sweden just has to sail the best they possibly can and hope that the Dutch aren't at their best. But we'll see how that plays out. In terms of lining up for this start line, have you got any sense yet of the lie of this course? And
Yeah, so the breeze has been going back and forth. It definitely has been shifting, and like I said, it's hard for us to tell with the drone shots what the pressure is. But I would think that these teams would really be looking up the course to look for pressure. And that's going to be, I think, with the fast boats, again, the more pressure you have, the faster you sail, the more lift you can generate. All things are good when you're in pressure. So I think a lot of the strategy, especially on the start line, is going to have a lot to do with that pressure. And so we're going to see the teams maybe give up a little bit on line favor to make their move where they think they need to be early in this race course.
we're on board with Steph Roble and Maggie Shea, USA 8. They've had some great moments this week, including race win. Just coming back down through the side of the line, they just checking their compass numbers, just checking the setup of the boat is okay. The U flag is up. That means you can't afford to be over the line in the final minute before the start. And they're looking. Let's keep an eye out for that U flag coming down, because I think it looks like they're pretty well lined up here, and they're booking their spot very early. So we've got Italy, we've got Great Britain, we've got USA up at the far end.
Yeah, and you can see China there hanging out above the committee boat. You're likely going to see them come in, see if they can do a late start at the committee boat, or come in and just duck those last boats on port and try to go out to the right. It looks like there are quite a few people who look like they like the right-hand side. There may be a little bit of pressure over there with some of the clouds. But again, you can see I saw the Brazilians there. They're somewhere by the Americans and the British. So there are some players all the way down the line for sure.
Yeah, it's a very well spread fleet along the length of this line. 35 boats, so pretty busy on quite a short start line.
Yeah, so the Chinese are just doing their approach, so we can't see them anymore on the. You know, that's a nice spot to set up if it's not too crowded, because you can really get a sense of the dynamic of the fleet and how far away from the line they are. If there's any sag, you just have to make sure that you can get a hole when you get in there.
Yeah. In these light winds, I'm wondering if there is something to be said for just being where everybody else isn't, just to get good, clean air over your rig.
Yeah, so now you can see how much everybody does like the right. So
I'd really like to get back in for that sideline look again if we can, because we need to see when that flag is coming down. We've got to be close to 1 minute coming up pretty soon, I would have thought. But they've been holding that spot at the starboard end for quite a long time now.
yeah, so you can see how much control they have, and especially if it's a right start, you've got to line up and you've got to get your spot early, or you know you're really going to end up down below the group. So it'll be interesting to see if China was able to get a spot. They're still trolling around by the committee boat, trying to get in there. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up when we come into the start. You see there's a few really late people setting up, including the Brazilians.
Yeah. Just under 30 seconds to go. Brazil looking like it's wanting the pin end. And maybe just one boat right at the bottom of the screen. Is it the Belgians? Can't quite tell at the moment.
Looks like Belgium, yeah.
Thinking about doing a port tack start underneath the fleet, but it's going to be Brazil with just over 10 seconds to go. 9, 8, looking close.
Look,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm saying recall.
Oh yeah, I think there
It's got to be a recall.
There was a bulge there in the middle of the line, up by the committee boat. Maybe the Polish pulling some people over. You know, the sailors. If it goes and your number doesn't get called, you really don't want to be hanging back and hanging in bad air, because again, you know, if your number wasn't called, then you're not going to have a good race. But that was definitely a general recall. We're likely going to see that black flag go up, and we'll have them turn around, and they'll probably get going really quickly here to get this race off.
And Brazil was looking very good coming off the line, off the pin end. In these conditions where you need to get the bow down to really get the boat motoring with very limited horsepower in these light wind conditions, I think that was a good place for the Brazilians to start.
Yeah, and if the breeze does go back and forth, you know, with a shift, then they would be leading into the next shift. You know, the only worry would be if there's some sort of feature like clouds that are going to give that right a little bit more pressure, then they'd be in trouble.
Chris Musil is joining us just very briefly before he runs down to the boat part later. Chris, what was the mood and the atmosphere in the boat part this morning with the FXs?
Well, there's two different moods, really. There are the people that are in contention for something, which is qualifying for the medal race or qualifying for an actual medal once you get into the medal race. And then there are the people that they know that those options are no longer on the table for them, and they're really just trying to take stock of the regatta and work on some details. So the you know, and actually, to be honest with you, everyone was in a pretty good mood today. And when we were talking to the skippers and crews, you know, we have a camera on Maggie Shea and Steph Roble. And Maggie, the crew, you know, we talked about this on the really other shifty day that we had. And the crew really is all boat speed a lot of the times in this race, on these boats. She's trimming the jib, trimming the main, making all the fine-tuned details that make the boat go fast. And it's really up to the skipper, who's out on the wire most of the time, to have their head out of the boat and looking around and just trying to drive as precisely as they can. But Maggie was saying she'll tell Steph, you know, when to put the bow down, when to press, when to go into a higher mode. And Steph is free to have that tactical mind, have that visualization to see what's going on around the course and where she wants to be.
So we're just waiting for things to settle down before we get back into the next start sequence. Yeah, we need to try and see whenever the flags go up, because we're struggling to get the time back here ashore with some of the technology that we've got. So we're reliant on the flags a little bit sometimes, like the sailors are. Yeah,
so you can see they're all up there. Oh, the flag's up right now. They're all up there and there's the black flag. That was the 4-minute gun right there. So they get very close to the race committee boat usually, so that they can hear the gun. They can usually even hear the countdown of the race officers on the boat, so that they know their time in their boat is exactly right. And because you don't want to be even half a second off on your clock.
No, absolutely. And timing even more critical now with the black flag. Chris, who do you think is going to be feeling particularly good in these light wind conditions?
Well, you know, I was looking at that start, and we were saying, you know, the fleet was kind of bunched up at the right-hand side, but it seemed like the fleet kind of migrated too. So everyone was there really early, and just as you go, 49ers are great at staying in one spot, but they were kind of shifting down. But like you said, you know, being able to keep your bow free in this light stuff, regardless of whether or not the right side was favored, if it wasn't dramatic, the Brazilians had a really great idea. They identified that early. They kind of took that spot, and their time and distance was pretty perfect. But in this light air, you know, I know North American sailors sail in light air. The U.S. team trains in Biscayne Bay in Miami, where it's a little bit lighter. So, you know, I got to hand it to the North Americans for that. But you know, again, the Brazilians, they moved up 4 places yesterday, and there's only 10 points between 9th place and 5th place. So I like the Brazilians in these conditions.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the Brazilians are pretty small as a team. That has worked against them in some of the full power boat speed conditions that we've seen on the past couple of days. But being slightly smaller than some of the other teams could stand in good stead for them today.
Yeah, so we're seeing quite a late setup by Steph Roble and Maggie Shea there. You can see USA 8 just coming down outside the race committee boat, and now they're going to be going into their setup. The Brazilians, again, they're hidden by Japan, but they're right there. There you can see their sail pop out. So they're very, very similar in space of where they were for the last start. You can see now we're right on the line. Those two orange flags lined up to form the invisible line, and the boats are definitely further back. The Canadian boat up there by the committee boat has been pulling the committee boat a little bit forward, but in general, this fleet is respecting that black flag and giving the line a little bit more distance.
And who can see Ned 1? I can't see them at the moment. I see that Sweden 77 is way back and looking like they're struggling to find a way through to the front.
Yeah, so I thought I just saw a little piece of Ned 1. They're all the way over by the committee boat.
Hand just controlling the tiller extension there, just trying to stop the boat from stalling.
There,
oh, the
you
flag
can
has
see
come
Ned
down.
1 punching out right now. They're in a really nice spot if they want to be going right. They've got command over the race committee boat right now.
We got about 45 seconds to the start. This time, Brazil 12, you can see, is a few along from the pin end, so they're going not quite so extreme as they did towards this end. And Ned 1, as you were saying, Lisa, that looks like they booked their spot right next to the committee boat. So they've got about 25 seconds to the start, and these boats are so good at holding their position. Meanwhile, we see Croatia. They're not averse to trying the port tack start. Are the Michele Vittori sisters going to try the brave port tack start? They're fairly far back in the standings. 10 seconds to go. Brazil 12, the first to accelerate.
Oh.
Just about to cross, and it looks like it's going to be a clean start. Very
nice start by the Brazilians.
Very, very good. And Italy 99 also accelerating really nicely off this end of the line. And on the far end, expect to see Netherlands 1 tack out early, out towards the right-hand side because they had the committee boat end booked. And but meanwhile, yeah, Lisa, it's Brazil that have got the best start at this end.
Yeah, Brazil really punched out there. They had beautiful time and distance on the line. It looked like some of the boats here at the pin were going to be a little bit late, but not the Brazilians. And that really gives them the ability. You can see how much space they have on Japan. So they can sail high, they can sail low, they can kind of pick the way that they want to sail in order to get out here to the left-hand side.
When you start in the middle of the line, you're really dependent on the boats around you to do the right thing and keep their bow down. So, what Brazil is hoping is that France and Japan around them are just sailing their boat as fast as they can. Sometimes those boats in the middle of the course, if they want to tack away to the right, they go into a high mode or a pinchy mode, and they try to squeeze the people off their hips so they have the option to tack and they're not blocked. But Brazil is hoping that they don't do that, so then everyone can just keep moving fast forward for as long as they can. We know in these big fleets, unless there's a huge shift to tack on or a big puff on the right, the longer you can hold your lane, the better off you are. If you can hold your lane for 2 minutes, you're already better than mid-fleet. If you can hold your lane for 3 minutes, you're usually up into the top 10.
And on that note, it doesn't look like Sweden 77 is doing a great job of holding its lane going out towards the left-hand side. So Sweden 77, you can see them in the middle of the picture there, and they're just tacking out now, and they're clutching at straws. So this is not what Sweden need. They really need to be winning this race or being close to the front if they've got any chance of closing the gap on Netherlands 1, who are somewhere out on the far side. Lisa, can you update us on Netherlands 1 progress?
Yeah, so they've had a mediocre start. They weren't bow out on the group, and they're actually in a really tight lane with Tenhoven Millen. They're just, you can see the Canadian flag there just below the Aussies, and then as they go through, you'll see that that's actually New Zealand. Well,
let's come back to that.
Yeah.
The Germans are doing very, very well on this side. Germany 224 and Germany 505 really popped out and looked like they might actually have the better of Brazil.
Yeah, where did...
Seems like Italy 99 still got plenty of good breeze or good air this side, clear air. But look how the Germans have lifted out on Brazil. Brazil had the better start off the line, but seems to be just missing out on something. As I say that, Brazil accelerate, and they found something a little bit better than the Germans. So they're popping out from underneath the Germans. So there's patches of gust that you're either in or you're not in.
Yeah, and you can see the speed track on the tracker really showing this. There's a lot of speed differences out there. So back to the Sweden Netherlands battle. I got a little bit confused with New Zealand there, but Ned won when they had that. And what ended up being a good start at the committee boat, they're actually tracking in the lead right now, and they're going out to the right. So they tacked fairly early, and they're actually sailing the boat a little bit high. I think they're trying to dust the boat on their hips so that they have a chance to tack. In a race like this, you don't want to be pinned so that you can't tack and you can't do what you want to do. So sometimes you'll see the sailors changing their mode to free themselves up to be able to tack when they want to tack.
And we can see there, Sweden 77, Vilma and Rebecca, they got kind of bounced out. Like you said, they had a mediocre start. But this is very telling. We'll see how when Brazil finally decides to tack back, they have to be very patient. Like when they had the German teams on their hip, they were kind of shearing off them or lifting off them. They know there's sometimes you don't know when you have to consolidate a side, but you know when not to. And I think that's the case for Brazil. They're kind of stuck going in this direction. But it's very telling right now how things are shaping up. But it's going to be a long beat. Whatever's causing what looks like the right side to be starting to be strong might change.
Yeah, so here we have the fleet's almost done a perfect split. We've got a number of boats on the left and a number of boats on the right, and they're just starting to make their way back to the mark. And again, we haven't had the drone shot to show us what the pressure is, but it looks like Brazil may be down a little bit now. So they've been sailing on a little bit of right, and if it stays right, which it's been tracking basically the whole time, Brazil's going to be taking a little bit of a knock coming back in. Now they look like they're back up. It's really up and down here, so patience and trying to make those crosses when you can is really key. So if Brazil can get across Sweden here, that's going to be a big thing for them trying to make their way back to the mark.
Bearing in mind how good Brazil's start was and how poor Sweden's start was, it goes to show how difficult it's been for Brazil on the left. And it looked to me when they tacked, it was a reluctant tack. It wasn't taken at the best of times, but they've really run out of road to be able to make any other choice.
I love how this race course is shaping up. I think it's very flat across the course. So from all the way on the left side to all the way on the right side, if you look on the awesome analytics that we have and the tracking, the whole line of boats is almost like a start line all the way across the course. And I think that's what's really exciting about this race. I have a feeling that this is going to be a very nuanced approach to this weather mark in terms of poking yourself out of these 20-something boats or 30-something boats all lined up together right now. It's a beautiful course right now. This is very rare. Usually one side just pokes out.
Yeah, so you can see even just the pressure differences. Belgium just got a little bit of something. They're poking ahead there. You can see them on port going across the rest of the group that's below. And Germany's not quite in it yet. They're just a little bit slower. And so, this is a game of patience for the boats. If they're trying to chase something, they're going to get in trouble here.
Japan, not with a huge amount of breeze there. It could come good for them. What Belgium has, Germany and Japan might get, but you just don't know. It's very localized, this breeze.
Yeah, and so Belgium's been able to take a port tack all the way across in front of that right group, and that was a big gainer for them to be able to now basically lead back to the mark.
We haven't been talking a lot about Ness and Groningen from Norway, but that team's been strong over the past 2 or 3 years. Always in it, and it's nice to see them finally kind of poking their way into the front of the fleet. It's amazing. Some teams will get top 3 at a world championship, show up at the next world championship, and really have a hard time making their mark. But it's really nice to see them poking out, and it just shows you the strength. Even though they've only had 2 quads, the strength of this fleet is getting really, really deep over the years.
Yeah, so that pressure that the Belgians had to get across, it seems to be filling a little bit more across the left-hand side. So the boats that were on the left, they sailed in what everybody started in a righty. That's why kind of everybody was at the committee boat. But they stayed in that shift all the way across, and now they're getting some pressure to get back over across these right-hand boats. So here's Norway. And they've really tapped into that to that left, and that bodes really well for on Norway's hip. Brazil is over the ley line because now they're getting into a left. That was the reluctant tack by Brazil. They're now over the ley line, but they're sailing fast, and they're really trying to get across Norway here. So it's going to be almost bow even with Brazil and Norway coming up here to the windward mark.
That's quite amazing. What an incredible comeback by Brazil if it works out that way. They are so good at seeing when to take the extreme opportunities.
And I love the footage of that tack from Norway. It just shows you the athleticism, even in the light air. Runningen goes around the front of the mast and then comes out, and it goes out on the trapeze, on the weather bow, and presses the bow back down so they're not dragging.
This is going to get really crowded. There's a bunch of boats coming in from the left. You'll see Brazil come into the screen very, very soon. And these are the boats that the Japanese boats we saw before. Here comes Brazil. So they've done a good job of having patience, tacking, you know, when they maybe didn't have the greatest number, knowing that if they go any further, they're going to be well overstood.
Yeah, very good recovery by Brazil, looking so shaky halfway up that windward leg. And now it's going to get really busy behind them as Brazil go around in 4th place, followed by Italy 99, and then 2 German teams and a bunch of boats struggling to make the mark here. It looks like the boat behind Germany is going to get round. That could be an Australian boat or a Kiwi. Can't quite tell. It's Australia. But the boat behind them struggling to
The
keep
Japanese there, yeah.
Or I don't know if they've made that or not.
I think they did. That was a really nice shoot to get around that mark. Wow.
And that was Sweden going around in amongst that group. We haven't seen Netherlands 1 yet. So is this an opportunity for Sweden to close the gap? Where is the Netherlands? Are they there? They are going around now, just behind Canada.
Yeah. So that pressure on the right.
Look at that jibe set for Netherlands 1.
Wow.
Wow. That is. I mean, there's no room to go in there. They've got a call for water on Canada for the starboard tack boat for the Croatians, but it's very, very messy.
But there must be something really obvious that when coming into that mark from the right-hand side, they must have seen the balance of the breeze swing at the very end of that beat to the right-hand side. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made such an aggressive move. I mean, that's really slow to make a 180 turn like that.
We've seen them make the jibe set work a few times this week, Netherlands 1. And so they're not averse to making that move, and they're far enough back in traffic that it's starting to become the obvious move. But out there going across on port tack, I'm just trying to see if that's our race leader. I don't think it is, actually. No, the race leaders are further down.
Yeah, they are further down, but they have also jibed. There you can see them right there with the blue and the red kite. So that's Belgium and Norway there, just jibed.
Now, we seem to have a lot of place changing going on according to our leaderboard, but Lisa, is that real or is that some glitch in the system? Because we're seeing a lot of changes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I think that's a glitch in the system because I see a really strong position by the 2 boats coming back across. Their speeds are quite a bit higher than those boats that did that jibe set and went over. I think playing maybe a shift that they felt, but it just seems like based on the speeds of the boat especially, there's a lot more pressure over here on the left right now.
Okay. And that is good speeds going downwind. Again, the German boat showing us 11.7, significantly faster than the others. I don't know if that's real. But Brazil looking good there with the purple Jenica in the middle of our shot right now.
Yeah, so they held for a little while longer, perhaps to dig into this pressure even a little bit more. And also, we have to remember, light air, you want to be staying away from boats, and there's quite a train that's jibed, and so I think they're trying to pick a little bit of a more open lane to try and approach this mark and have. You know, again, because we're on the run, if you're below, you know, you have the option to head up and to attack the boats that are above you and try and solidify your position.
I think this footage was amazing of Martina and Kahena in terms of how they played their apparent wind sailing, with Kahena going into the middle of the boat and they just what we would call soaking down, keeping the pressure on the sails but going as deep as they can until it gets a little bit too slow, and then scooting it up a little bit, and Kahena's hiking off the inner tow rail. kind of deep with her up at the mast. Okay, we got just a little note from expert Ben Remacher that she was just going in to clear the weed. So what Martina was doing was diving down a little bit, a quick board up, unload the center board, let the weed fly off the back, and then put the board down. So it was even not even as much of a tactical thing in terms of pressure sailing low, but more just clearing the weed.
Yeah, and that's the factor. It's easy for us to forget that has been an issue at times, and that's the thing that we can't see that well. Now we've got the leaders coming down towards the bottom gate, and it's Norway deciding to jibe around to go for the right-hand side of the gate. Lisa, why do you think Norway is choosing that side?
Norway's going around the right-hand side.
Yeah.
I think that they've clearly felt that there's probably a little bit of a shift that they want to get in phase with to get out to that side. And there's some pressure. The boats that did the jibe set looked like they were losing at the beginning, and there definitely was left pressure at the top. But as they went down, the Germans did come down with a nice bit of pressure in the middle right. And so I think those boats are going out there to get their nose into that, and then they'll kind of decide where they want to make the split, left or right at the top.
A good telling point would be Netherlands 1, because we saw them really aggressively with a pair of boats jibe in for that jibe set. We'll see how they made out.
Very good race for Laura Harding and Annie Wilmot in Australia 47, currently lying third. They've gone off to the right-hand side. Brazil's the first boat to choose the left-hand side of the track, and it was Brazil who went up the left-hand side of the track first time round. So will they be able to make it stick this time?
Brazil was able to gain an extra boat length on the German team that rounded the right-hand mark facing upwind just by holding their kite right to the mark. Like the second before they turned up, they sucked the kite down, and they gained a full boat length on the other boat that they were just behind.
Yeah, these boats stop. As soon as you get the kite down, they stop so quickly if you're sailing downwind, like Italy 99 looking really slow going around the left-hand mark. They got their kite down a little bit early. They sort of needed to anyway because they were waiting for the other boat to go round. And USA 8 about to go round the right-hand side. Not a great race for Robel and Shea, getting the kite down very late there, just as Chris was explaining. That's the way to get a great kite drop down.
So here's the black kite just coming into your screen of Ned 1, and they're going to be rounding the right-hand gate, looking upwind. Almost identical time to the Swedes rounding the other gate on the other side. So our two race leaders are going to be doing a split here on the second beat. And as we saw, there's lots of gains and losses to be made. So this may be a moving beat for one of the two of them as far as their point splits going into that medal race.
Yeah, so that's a loss for Sweden, who were leading the Dutch by a few places. So that jibe set, it looked so desperate at the time. That jibe set for the Netherlands has actually worked out for them.
And
Yeah.
Japan was one of that lost quite a few boats on that downwind leg. They were in that top 5 group around the weather mark, and something happened. They probably just got ping-pong back and forth in kind of the middle right side of that downwind leg, whereas the other teams kind of split to get their air clear.
Yeah, a lot of it I think is air clear. They're and we can see that with this right here. You can see, looks to me like there's a little bit more pressure up to that middle right. You can see.
The Norwegians are they're
Yeah.
out and gone. I mean, they sailed on a high port and they've just tacked, and now they're on a high starboard. I think the Norwegians are absolutely racing away with this. And I think the Brazilians and the others that have tacked onto port now find themselves pointing back at their rivals that went round the opposite mark.
Yeah, and you can see there's a little bit more pressure up there, and the Norwegians, they're going to be very happy to take this pressure across the rest of the group. And then probably do a loose cover with a nice conservative position to lead them back over there again.
Yeah, and actually I should correct myself. The port tackers don't look as bad as I thought they were. There's actually better angle for the port tackers on the left of your screen.
Yeah, and that's probably to do with the fact that a lot of them are getting into that pressure now. So as soon as you get into the pressure, you're going to get a little bit more lift, and it's going to feel a lot nicer and look a lot nicer. We see Can 6, the Lou and LaFrance girls struggling here with their lane holding to try and get out and get into something. And then they've had to tack away because of the height of the Japanese.
And this is pretty desperate times for Sweden 77 in the front of your picture. I feel like they need to be getting over there as well, but they may be feeling held on by the Japanese. But I feel this is not going well for Sweden 77 at the moment.
No, I mean, I'd rather be the Swedes than the Canadians. You can see how costly it is to have to sail back in underneath the rest of the fleet, where you really don't have a lot of options. And I think the Swedish right now are just they're waiting for some sort of pressure to be able to feel like it makes sense to go back and not have to sail back under the rest of the fleet where you can't make any gains at all.
Well, let's make sure our memory isn't too short. This looks like a lot like Brazil when they were going up that first beat, where they had to be patient and there was a wrong time to go back. So let's, every beat is different in these kind of lighter conditions, but there's definitely some patience involved here. You see a lot of cross chop here. It's really bouncy right now. That is definitely not a time to go back. But there's also, there's a lot of hope going on right now too, unless they see something obvious.
And Lisa, are you able to locate Netherlands? Oh, there they are. We see them in the 3D.
Yeah, so, and this is a smart thing by the Dutch. They have a substantial lead on the Swedish. So for them, if they have a bad race, it's not the end of the world as long as the Swedish don't have a good race. So really smart sailing by them to stay close to the Swedes. If they both have to eat a bad score, not the end of the world for the Dutch. So, I like their position, and I think this is some really, really smart sailing by them.
So a loose sort of match race, not an aggressive match race, but they're sort of covering their main rival and their only serious rival to take the gold medal away from them.
Yeah, if there's one or two boats in between, like the Japanese, not the end of the world. And now, I mean, they could choose to send the Swedes back out because it does look like they're ahead of them.
Let's take a look at that drone shot if they're on Sweden and Netherlands. We'd love to see that going on between those two boats. So if we can get back to the live shots, that would be great, but maybe we're not in a position to do so. So Netherlands going out beyond. A bit surprised by that.
That's Norway, our race leaders. Yeah, there's the Swedish right there. And yeah, there are a few boats above them. Brazil is in that mix coming out to the left. So I think the Dutch are just trying to, again, sail their own race, but be on the same sides of the Swedes so they can't make too much gains.
Yeah. So whatever the Swedes get, the Dutch will get too. That's the idea. That's Spain 23 going across on the left of your picture. They are in third position in the standings at the moment, and it's pretty difficult for them to climb or to drop. They've got big space on the leaderboard either side of them, so very likely it's going to be a bronze medal for Echegoyen and Barcelo, the double world champions of previous years.
I wouldn't be so down on Sweden 77 right now. This is a lot like, at least with a group of about 10 boats, a lot like that last beat where it's pretty level. So just a little difference can make, you're in either a castle or you're an outhouse in these kind of situations. So all that matters is if you set yourself up for that kind of last shift, that last line of pressure. And, a lot of those boats didn't have a choice when they started that beat, but we'll see how it ends up. But obviously, the Norwegian team is just, they're gone. They're a tall, light team, and they know what to do. They've been top 3 at the World Championships, so it's really great to see them putting their mark on this race.
So that's Norway 2 leading this race, just doing a quick couple of tacks to get their way up to the windward mark for the final time. So this will be their last tack of the race for Jason Ronigan, who finally are coming good. That's the number 2 on their sail. Norway 2 tells us that they were second at last year's World Championships in Oman in light wind conditions. They've really not had the best of regattas by their standards, but they're coming good in this race now.
Yeah, so as we watch these boats coming around, the Belgians are having a very good race. We saw them punch out in that pressure on the start, and this is getting them into the top 10. It's bumping Ali and Meach out of the top 10, and it's pulling them back in to this top 10 race, and that is a clutch performance by the Belgians.
Just when they needed it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the big, and the Brazilians, again, we've seen them have really good positioning and patience in this race, and it's moving them up into 7th place. They've jumped over Black and Tidy in the results if it stands as they round right now. So they'll be in 7th and hopefully within quite a good ability to get back into up to 5th place.
Yeah, and very, very close to overtake Robel Shea and Suarez and Cantero from Spain. Really, really tight on points, and Brazil somehow getting their way around this really tricky racetrack.
But this was very telling. Boats came from far right and far left, and there was very little change in the top 5. Brazil just lost 1 place there, but all those boats came in at a pretty close timing.
So now we see Sweden on the left of your screen on port tack, with Japan just to leeward of them. But where are Netherlands 1? Netherlands 1, they came the same side. That's with Robel and Shea. The Americans just going into the hoist. Maggie Shea arm over arming the hoist. Oh no, that is the Polish. Sorry, Polish.
And they're having a good race, solidifying their spot in 4th. They're, again, they're increasing the gaps and their comfort going into that medal race.
So let's look out for Netherlands 1. That's USA 8. Robel and Shea just going around the mark now. Sweden 77. Have they got ahead of Netherlands 1? Yes, they have, because immediately above them in the picture is Netherlands 1. So these are important points gained by Sweden 77. I don't understand how the Dutch have let the Swedes off the hook. They had them in a controlling position.
Yeah, and they sailed away from them, got caught sailing their own race, instead of really staying with them. And they could have tacked in front of them there, because that was a duck. And you can see here the Japanese rounded about 5 boats ago, and the Canadians are just coming in on port and rounding. So you can see how losing your lane in critical moments can have a 10-boat swing in your race.
And not only that, you normally see the Dutch go for a jibe set in marginal situations. They've gone for a straight set, which means they're following the Swedes. Maybe they want to consolidate the loss. They're 4 boats behind at the moment. Maybe they think that's the better way to sail conservatively, is to sail the same way as the Swedes. But really, you want to be sailing the same way as the Swedes when you're in front of them, not when you're behind them.
Yeah, I mean, they had the ability to do that in the beat, and now kind of they've lost control over what's going on right now.
But Andy, I think you're totally right. Staying with the boat that's closest to them, even if it's behind. All these teams, when I talked to them yesterday and this morning, they're not looking at the medal race as a foregone conclusion. They're looking at making sure they're controlling or minimizing damage in the last fleet race, no matter where they are in the top 10.
They went into the day, the Dutch, with a 13-point advantage over the Swedes. That is now down to a 6-point advantage. The Swedes, if things stay this way, can start to dream that in the medal race this afternoon, they could well get 3 boats between them and the Dutch. So the Dutch have really made life much harder for themselves. And here we see them following the Swedes on the same line through the jibe as well. So I think, Chris, what you've just said, they're just looking to keep it tight, or as tight as they can do with the Swedes, not do anything dramatic. They've already made a gamble for some strange reason to give away the points that they have. They're not going to make that mistake again.
We can also see the Belgians, the Australians, and the Germans in the top 5 right now. They make some big moves for themselves, but Brazil in 5th. A 5th is gonna, just like they had 2 double digits and a single digit yesterday, and that brought them up 3 places. That 5th place in this race is going to probably bring them right up to 6th place or even 5th place after this, going in the medal race. That's a big deal. Those are the kind of changes that are going on in this race right now.
For these girls, it's been a disappointing championship, but what a way to finish. A very, very clear lead for Nason Ronigan from Norway, leading by 160 meters as they cross the finish line. Will this be enough to get them up into the medal race? No, it won't. They're going to end up about something around 12th or 13th place overall, and some points out of the medal race. But anyway, nice way for the team that was second at the Worlds last year to finish off the regatta here in Canada.
Yeah, they'll be happy to be up there and to walk away with a good one and have something to build on moving into next season for sure.
So now it's Belgium coming across the line. This is going to be a great finish for them. And the Belgians, Meinhardt and Geerts, knew that they needed to do something big to be able to get up into the medal race. It looks like Australia might just take second place off them. So that is a great finish there by the Australians to just pip them to the post by the look of it. But I think that is still going to be enough by the skin of their teeth for the Belgians to get through. But it does depend on what Ali and Meach, New Zealand 75, managed to do on the final run. They're in 19th place at the moment. So Ali and Meach, it's still within their grasp if they can overtake some boats to get back into the medal race, because currently those Kiwis are out of it and the Belgians are in. So let's keep an eye on how Ali and Meach do. Meanwhile, how is Sweden doing ahead of Netherlands 1? Netherlands 1 continuing to track Sweden 77, doing a cover from the other side, you know, from behind on the Swedes, just trying to minimize the damage after that tactical error up the second beat. So Van Aanholt and Doots, what are you seeing, Lisa?
Well, it just doesn't seem like they're minimizing damage. It seems like they're making more a little bit. The Dutch, I think, are losing a few boats. I think they may be, you know, paying a little bit of attention to what's going on with the Swedish, and you know that you just saw them duck another boat there. And so it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of boats here coming in on the right-hand side of the race course. And so there's a lot of boats. The Swedes have a beautiful angle coming in here. They've actually made a pass. And so look at how many boats can get between the Dutch and the Swedish if the Dutch don't have a really flying angle coming into this mark.
That is a brilliant finish by the Red Jenica of Sweden 77. Just dropped into the chute after taking a bunch of boats with a really tight approach at the finish, with great apparent wind, and Bobek and Netzler have really turned it on in these light conditions just when they needed to. And now we need to see Netherlands 1 and see what they can do. Well, again, they're making a similar tight approach, which has gained some boats back for Van Aanholt and Doots. But this has been an expensive race for them, with 6 boats between them and the Swedes. That's a lot of points to have given away, and sets us up for a much more exciting medal race this afternoon.
Yeah, and New Zealand is just crossing the line. They were in that pack, and they were only able to get to 20. So they actually lost a few boats when the boats compressed. You know, that was all about your tactical decisions and how you can get a really nice fast angle, as you can see with the Swedes. And here's another super, super tight rounding. Now, boats do have room to finish as they get inside the 3 boat length zone. But wow, this is tight. I don't even know how the race committee is going to call this one.
No, I mean, they might have to look back at this drone footage to find out who won on that photo finish. Really, really busy round this end of the finish line. And dreams are sometimes won on lost and short moments like that. That was so busy around that mark. So there are the standings. And look how tight it is now. That's just 5 points the gap now for Sweden to close on Van Aanholt and Doots, who still lead. But what a giveaway for the Dutch there. They could have consolidated a nice lead going into the medal race, but now it sets it up for an interesting match race. Barcelo and Eschagoyen, they can't move from bronze position. The bronze is nailed on for the double world champions. But behind them, it's going to be interesting to see how the places change. Graal and Kunz, well, they can't get a medal, but in 7th place, they could easily jump past 5th and 6th, the Spanish and the Americans. Black and Tidy, that's an unfortunate race for them. It drops them back to 8th, but they could still climb back to 5th. Maloney and Hobbs, well, they're going to be the sole representative for New Zealand, because there should have been another team in there for New Zealand in 10th place. But Joe Ali and Molly Meach, the Olympic silver medalist, and also the gold medal from the 470 for Joe Ali, that she's not going to make the medal race in her first ever world championship in a 49er FX, because it's the 3rd place of Mainhout and Goertz from Belgium, who that secures them 10th place in the medal race. And there you see it. Ali and Meach just a few points back, but a disastrous 20th place means they just miss out, with Germany and Bertuzzi in 12th, and Nathan Ronigan, the consolation prize of winning their last race of the championship, to finish up in 13th overall. And in 14th, Lewin-la-France, well, they got a strange .1 on their scores there. So just tell us about that, Lisa.
Yeah, so they have a redress from a protest that actually got reopened, and there was some contact with two starboard boats and then a port boat, which actually took them out of a race. So they weren't able to finish the race. So they were given average points of the whole championship, and so that .1 is because of it's an average points over the whole series, so it doesn't end up with a nice round number.
Okay, and let's just note a couple of other things. Canada also, Ten Hoven Millen in 19th. Canada was hoping for better than 14th and 19th place. What's the lesson to take away from Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were. You can see that their score lines, especially the Lewin-la-France sisters, they've got some really nice scores along there. Consistency for them was an issue this week. And again, you know, they're a quad and a half in. They're still a young team, and they're showing some real signs of promise. Ten Hoven Millen, they've made some real gains this season, but it's just clear that they haven't solidified the gains yet. But they've shown the promise, and so they just need to keep working on the process. They're not, they're not off on where they are. They just aren't quite there yet. But they're definitely players, and hopefully they'll be playing for more medal races in the next season.
Who and you in 17th place? We had a lot to say about them on day 3 and those light and tricky conditions. They sailed an absolute blinder on that day, and we have really had to sit up and take notice of the rise of the Chinese in all 3 classes here, the 49er, the FX, and the skiff. How much can we expect of the Chinese in the coming years? Do you think it's realistic to talk about a medal for China in Paris 2024?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a matter of, when you start to perform, how do you deal with that pressure? And so, some of these are unknown performers, so we don't know how they deal with pressure. And some athletes are very good at it, and and some athletes need a little bit of time to mentally be able to hold on to their performance mode. So develop over the next season where they have shown that they can really play the game.
Okay, well, that's it from us for the moment, but do join us later on for the medal races for all 3 classes. That's going to be at 1400 local time. That's just over 3 hours from now. So the sailors need to take a bit of time out, and then they need to start getting their heads back in the game for the showdown this afternoon. Make sure you like and are already subscribed. If you're not, then subscribe. Tell your friends. Make sure that everyone that you know who cares about sailboat racing tunes in for this afternoon. We'll see you in 3 hours' time, 1400 local time. That's for the 3 medal races. See you then.
boat to get it into the right position. 5 seconds to go now. See these girls pull the trigger. 2, 1, and these guys are racing. A few boats struggling with that speed build in the middle of the line. USA 9 has got off to a good start. Sweden 5 as well, and Austria 61 is your pin boat as it stands.
We're underway. I thought I heard a second signal. I'm not sure whether we can pick up on that or not, but we are certainly underway with this race. It's race 10.
The fleet looked just a little bit off the line by about boat length and a half or so. You didn't see the people right up on, you didn't see the boats right up on the corners punching out. And I thought that was maybe, you know, after a long day of waiting, they didn't want to make any mistakes. There's a lot at stake here.
On board here now with Heineken and Anna Tobias there. These girls, you can see them getting their shoulders right back, getting their weight out. You can see the Danish team 49 just off those shoulders, and we've heard about the hot fight against the Danish teams. And I can give you an update that the other Danish team has tacked off. So these guys have split across the course. Not so much keeping each other tucked away. They're really focusing on getting the best race out that they can today.
Yeah, nice even spread across the field as they head up this first windward beat. Looks like the majority of the fleet have stayed on starboard and they've found a lane. A few of the boats that were forced to tack away would have been a clearing tack. Good, and Nielsby from Denmark. We've got camera on board. We can look at their style. There's a little bit more seaway running, so that's going to just make it a little bit more spicy. And as the wind builds later in the day, I expect it to get quite choppy.
I love those shots on board. You can see how hard the crew works in these boats. They are the accelerator of the boat, and they're working that main sheet. The boom is just constantly moving. This boat goes its fastest when it's dead flat through the water, and it is quite a juggle with their controls. So they've got the Vang and the Cunningham at their feet there, but they're moving that main sheet constantly to try to keep that angle of attack or angle of heel through the water dead straight. Nice little tack here from the Austrians. They'll be under a bit of pressure now with the Swedish team 15 tacking right in front of them.
So boats now starting to peel away as we look at the leaderboard. It's still early days and the leaderboard will jump around a little bit, but there's a good indication there who make up that top 10. As we can see in the middle of the field there, we've got Sweden showing to be Gross and Klinger in the lead.
Also, an interesting turn of events here. Schutt and Nielsby, Denmark 49, appears to have done a penalty turn during that upwind. So a little bit of a hit with them. Perhaps they've had a little bit of an altercation with another team.
Yeah, port and starboard there. See, that could be an incident there. Finland came across on port. The US team had to crash, tack. They were the right-of-way bait, USA 9, and they really, I think Finland may well have incurred a penalty there.
Penalties happening all over the board. We've also got Dobson and Tidy also doing a penalty turn on this upwind as well. These girls are doing loops, and it is the way. You're better to be safe than sorry. You don't want to end this day in the room. If there's any indication that you are in the wrong, you'll see these girls there so good on their boat handling, getting that turn in, turning a fresh page and trying to get the best result they can.
Chris, what did you think of that one? Henkin and Tobias looked like they had to give way.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing. Both boats are going the way they want to go, and if there's not room for a duck in their head-to-head, something has to give. And it seems to me that they both wanted to go the way they wanted to go, and it really did look like the USA had to kind of clear out of there. But you don't see Finland doing any turns.
I can see it on the tracker, so they have just got their turn in
they
now.
did.
So
okay.
it was off camera. We missed that moment, but these girls have done their penalty turns. That makes 3 now in this race.
Yeah, and we saw that this whole the majority of the fleet went left and then took a little shift and headed back. But there's about 4 or 5 boats, maybe even the British off to the right, that are only a couple boats are going to come out of that side. Usually one side is a dominant side, but if you win the non-dominant side, you should come out in the top group at the weather mark.
Good shape in the middle there for Lutz and Weimers from Germany. They cleared out from that bunch, and right now they're showing to be in a nice lane, heading across on port. It's a good break there. Good recovery from Henkin and Tobias. With they had to do a crash tack. They came in on starboard. They had the right. Wasn't a great tack for them, but they've managed that. They're on the right side of the course, so we see the USA team up there in a close 5th.
And that pack that we are following here, Germany 5, USA 9, they do have a slightly better angle coming across on port currently than the boats that are further to the right on the same tack. But a few interesting crosses here. You can see on your screen those teams coming across on starboard. We will be able to see how these guys have shaped up. They've had a small split, but generally these girls are keeping a pretty close watch on one another.
And let's watch as they go up the course. There's just a handful of boats off to the right-hand side. Really 3, maybe 4 boats on the right. They're legged out there. They tacked out there early. The middle group is as we saw, they're fighting with each other. They're doing penalty circles. So even if the breeze doesn't fully come in from the right, that group has done a lot less maneuvering and been straight line speed for a long time.
Yeah, so I'll give you an update on who those teams are. There's Westler and Netzler. The Swedish team, also Squares and Van der Weyden, Spain 21, and Stabæk and Elks, Australia 31. So they are the main 3 boats that have broken out from the pack over on that right-hand side.
Yeah, the group that started up on the committee boat and they went right and they didn't get involved with that arm wrestle in the middle of the track have done nicely, the top 3. Then we've got Ten Hove, is it, from Ten Hove, and Millen from Canada up there as well, also on that right-hand group.
And look at this conversion. These guys are coming together. You've got a great shot of that with your SAP trackers there. These guys are going to be coming in super close, but to me it looks like perhaps the right-hand pack may have a slight advantage coming into this cross.
Just a little note about the Canadians. They knew that they were quite a bit out of getting into the medal race, but they were very upbeat this morning when we spoke with them. Both of those sailors, their fathers went to the Olympic Games.
Oh, nice. That's a great little byplay. Well, they certainly have picked it nicely off the line. They've got over to the right, just below the starboard ley line, the Canadian team.
Looks like Heinken and Tobias have just found a 6th gear there. They're sailing super high, and they will just get across the Swedish team, Westler and Nestler, and a nice close cross, perhaps with Lutz and Weimers. And an undertack there it is.
That's a big cross, and given they were compromised up that first women beat, it would mean that Henkin and Tobias, I think they're showing good speed. First time I've seen Echegayen, Barcelo, the overall leaders, they certainly are in that pack, looking to push forward.
It's really important to recognize the teams that are kind of on the bubble, and we identified the Norway team, Ness and Renningen. We talked to them earlier, and they're 10 to 12 points out, but they really were hoping that they'd squeeze in. They're kind of the last people that can possibly get in the medal race. And Helena Ness has been suffering the last 10, 12 days in antibiotics from an ear infection. So she's been struggling this week, but they're probably one of the last teams that can try to get in the medal race if all things line up their way.
Just having a quick check-in with our equal first race play.